you start to put two and two together when you're deep in thought, and when you start thinking about like how are things going to change, how is it that you're going to be able to affect change on issues that you give a shit about,
Mm.
and then you say, well, this isn't a now problem. This is a problem that started in the early 1900s. Well, why did it start? And then you keep going, and you're like, wait a minute, we might be in some pretty deep shit. Like it's not just that we have to defeat the left and get a wall. This is a much deeper problem than that. And then you think
Okay.
to yourself, okay, well, am I an authoritarian? Or is authoritarianism even bad? Is there some way to overcome what's going on right now without the loss of life? Probably not.
Mm.
Is this something that we should want to happen? Should we be looking for it to happen? Probably. And then you look at the way things are going, and the way that things are starting to be looked at by the general population, and you realize, like, okay, we're not fighting on an even keel at this point. We are so far behind that if we don't actually start advancing right now, we're dead in the water. At this point, I don't believe in my heart of hearts that this is about Donald Trump. Okay, I don't think it's about Donald Trump. I don't think it's about the right and the left. I think that it is basically, and I don't want to get like biblical or sound retarded, but what I'm saying is that it's an assault on the idea of God, right? For since ancient Egypt, there has been this idea that there was a divine creator, and that divine creator put moral constraints on humanity, right? And the easiest way to see those moral constraints were in the fact of biology and the fact of nature and the fact of what was going on as biology progressed, as human nature progressed, as all of these things progressed, right? Now we know a little bit more because we can actually analyze the body without killing it, and we can say, okay, well, women are made for child rearing, right? Their bodies are made for it. Their mammary glands activate as soon as they've given birth. They cleanse their womb with a menstrual cycle, right? And the biggest thing, and this is where I was when I was doing this last night. I'm gonna give you guys a total geek alert. I read math books when I get really bored. Okay, I'm really into math. I always have been. I have a degree in math. I like math. So I was reading about fractal geometry, which, I mean, again, I don't expect that to impress anyone. But the whole idea was that using geometry in order to measure basically the balance of nature, like how does nature interact with each other, how do organisms form in order to interact with nature, it can only be done by introducing what's called variance, which is that you can't know everything, so you have to guess certain aspects. Certain numbers have to be guessed,
Hmm.
right? So when does it come to a point where, and this was like my eureka moment, I was like, okay, but when you introduce too much unknown, too much variance, right? You're no longer in the field of geometry, you're in the field of chaos math, which is where my specialty was when I was in school, right?
Hmm.
Chaos math is a completely different form of mathematics. And a lot of people say it's beautiful. I actually don't find it very beautiful. I find it more terrifying than I do beautiful. But it's the
Hmm.
idea that in what appears to be a massive amount of chaos, there are always going to be patterns. And when you find those patterns, you actually are able to see the absolute ridiculous level of organization that appears to the common eye as chaos. Right? Like the world around us is ridiculously organized, like down to the quark. And that the absence of that organization would just end everything that exists. And so it has to be able to be measured. We don't might not have the
But
technology
you're
to do
saying
it.
you're saying the world, in order as far as like science, what you're talking about, how everything works in sync together.
I'm talking about mathematics. This isn't a science lesson, right? It's just that the idea that amongst chaos, you can find patterns, and people finding patterns, you not only can see where everything has come from, because when you work out, math is the universal language of truth, right? 1 plus 1 equals 2. It is 100% true. 1 plus 2 does not equal 2. Also 100% true. Like you can absolutely declare math to be true and false, right? And when you look into the chaos, when you gaze out into the void, right, and you can find those type of patterns, then you can see, as I said, where what has always been, and you can use it as a sort of predictive measure, right? You could say, okay, these two things interact like this. This was created like this, and this is the reason that it's going to predictably do X, Y, and Z, right? Even in what seems to be completely unpredictable, right? Like I said, you have the woman's body, which was put towards child rearing, right? And in the absence of testosterone, right?
Hmm.
estrogen is the most beautiful chemical for fomenting empathy. Okay, now there's a couple Spurgs that hang out in our chat that love to tell me that the white race is overly empathetic, and that overly empathetic nature causes them to be taken advantage of by, like Jews and women and all kinds of shit like that because they're so empathetic. Mm-hmm. Right? That is actually not true at all. Okay, the white race is not more empathetic than anybody. If you look at the empires of Britain, France, Spain, Germany, like, they are filled with a lack of empathy. Okay, there is no overabundance of empathy in European whites. Okay, but there was a little thing that happened in the 20s, right? And Carrie Donovan is about to get ridiculously triggered. Okay, so I'm just warning you. I am not concerned at all. And if you feel like I'm talking to you in the chat, then do a little self-evaluation, because this is going to the void. I'm just saying what I am starting to see. Okay, you could take it personal, you could not. Doesn't matter to me at all. Okay, is that there started this movement where women decided that they needed the right to vote. Right? Now, that's fine. If a woman wants to voice her opinion, she should have a right to vote. But she should also be entailed to have the same level of responsibility that's necessary to vote, which in that case was being eligible for the military draft. Right? Now, I would not suggest that a woman would be appropriate for the military draft, because I don't want a bunch of women storming Normandy. Okay? It would have been a bad idea. So therefore, they should not have a voice in the authorization of the use of force. Okay, if they're not going to be the ones getting shot at, if they're not going to be the ones charging the bulkhead, then they don't get that vote. Their family gets a vote. Okay, they elect a representative, the man who is actually eligible to go fight, and he represents his family as to whether his family is willing to make the sacrifice of service. Right? That makes sense, because testosterone is the exact opposite of estrogen. It dulls the idea of empathy. It enables you to see the larger picture and not focus solely on yourself. It's an unselfish chemical, right? It forces you to actually care about the survival of the tribe, the survival of the species. Women may hunt, but like in a lion's pride, right? The women go out and hunt and they bring back the food, but the man decides who gets it, right? The man inspires fear. The male is always doing these kind of things. And at that point, so we cucked a little bit. And we said, okay, you know what? It's not about all of these things. It's not about the breakdown of the family. It's just about a voice. And I'm quite sure there were plenty of politicians at that time that thought, ooh, I'm going to nail this whole women's vote thing. You know what I'm saying? And that's where all of a sudden first wave feminism started the movement for women's equality, which we still hear about today. Okay? Now, since that time, right, we have established entire industries that are government subsidized to assist women in not having to rear their children. Okay, we've created subsidized daycare. We've created subsidized lunch programs. We've subsidized after-school programs. We've mandated education. Okay, we have done all of these things. We've mandated maternity leave. We've mandated all kinds of healthcare expenses. We've legalized abortion, which is ridiculous. We've done all of these things in order to allow women to basically function as men without having to rely on themselves to do it.
And right now, your girlfriend Ivanka is running around with her new bill and policy to use foreign aid money to help women start businesses.
So
same thing.
Basically, exactly. But what I'm saying though is that as this is progressing, right? What you're noticing is now, instead of one person being home running the house and raising children, which is the primary responsibility of a family unit, and one person going out and making sure that that family is provided for, you have both people going out, and in come the immigrants, right? We need Haitians to do the daycare. We need Mexicans to mow the lawn. We need, people to do fast food industries and to do all of these things, because we can't provide for our own families anymore. We're at work all day. The kids never even get to meet their parents unless it's at night, and they've become more of an annoyance than ever before. What turned out to be, oh, I just want a voice in this, has turned into an industry of Gibbs that has branched out all over the place. And as I said, we went from we want a voice in the 20s to we should have the right to murder our children if they get in our way in the 70s. And right now we have a lot of people that go, I can't find a mate. I'm looking and looking. I don't understand why all the women are putting on hijabs and trying to attract sand apes that we've imported from Syria. I don't understand why this is going on. And it's like, because you're not functioning as a man anymore. You're functioning on feelings. You're talking about how things hurt and how you have empathy and things like that. While this guy is going out, and punching people in the face, and the girl is sitting in the corner going, I deserved it. There is a certain level of animal attraction that comes from overt masculinity, and it exists in a biological function. Okay, this is not something that is my opinion. It exists in a biological function. It absolutely exists, right? And all of a sudden, you're noticing that the race of people who are losing that masculine edge, who are not, they're stuffed on soy. They're never going outside and getting any vitamin D. They're being forced to school. They're studying gender studies. They're not even allowed to identify their race without fear of being mocked. You know what I'm saying? Hey, I'm white. Fuck you. You know what I'm saying? And you have other classes of people. You have illegal immigrants. You have blacks. You have women. You have all of these interest groups who are claiming that they're being oppressed by this minority of people, right? And their oppression is so entrenched that they have the right to get more and more and more advantage, to the point where now their advantage is so overly provided for that how can you even claim oppression anymore? A white man has no opinion anymore. They're not allowed. If I come out tomorrow and chat, feel free. I'm not white, whatever. But I come out tomorrow and I say abortion is murder. You're killing a baby, right? They'll be like, why are you oppressing my healthcare rights? You don't have healthcare rights to kill someone. That's not a thing. No, I have a right to my body. Yes, and you allowed a penis into it, which ejaculated and made a baby. And now that baby has the same fucking right you do. That baby has just as a right not to be killed as you do. Now I get it. If that baby's going to kill mommy, then the baby goes first. If there's a hierarchical decision that needs to be made, I get it. And that becomes a fringe case, and fringe cases can always be decided. But the fringe case is not the norm. The norm is, oh shit, I got drunk at a party last night. I'm pregnant. I really don't have time or energy to have a kid right now, so therefore I'm done. And every family right now is basically a divorced family, because you've got mom at work all day, you have dad at work all day, you have the kid being raised by two places, the state and daycare workers. And when they finally come home, they're saying, you know what I deserve from the government? More Gibbs. I need to have more Gibbs from the government, because it's not fair that I have to go to work from 7 a.m. until 6 o'clock at night, and I can't go to the movies 3 days a week. Why should I have to pay for daycare for my kid? You should have to pay for that because you're benefiting from my labor. Government, you're taking taxes from my labor. You should have to pay for the rearing of my children. So now you have a masculine woman, you have a feminine male, and there's no one for the kids. So what happens at that point? Now let's start normalizing degeneracy. This is the attack on God that I was talking about. The religious ideals that were easily enforced because God said not to do this, okay, which are backed up 100% by science, right? All of a sudden now that becomes a complete shout to the wind. You're nuts if you just say, God says that's not okay, right? That now it's to the point you see it on TV, and what is it? That two men that fuck each other are now a family. Okay, that is exactly their requirement to define themselves as a family, that they like to fuck each other instead of women, right? So therefore, we have to give them kids, okay? We have to give them kids and let them raise their kids, and then bring them into a classroom to explain that this new family that we've introduced into the void is one man who makes a conscious decision that he would rather fuck another dude than actually make babies and have a family. Now that choice is being subsidized, because now we're giving him children. Now we're putting classes in place that take away from math and science and English and arithmetic. I know math and arithmetic are the same thing. It's been a long night. But I'm just saying that at this point now, the priority is to make sure that two men that fuck each other are considered a family. And the priority is to make sure they're getting their children handed to them, which aren't their children. Okay? They also have no empathy at all for that child. That child is a political statement. That's why you have all of these two men that fuck each other couples that are raising their kids genderless, or raising their kids to understand that, the dick is awesome, or whatever it is, or putting their kids on 11-year-old strip shows. And this is what we're normalizing. This is exactly what we're doing. This is why we have to now start to fight tolerance with absolute 100% intolerance. There can't be any more compromises. If we want to survive as a people, we cannot compromise any further. There can't be a single inch given anymore. It has to stop. We can't look at this as if this guy is 18 and he wants to cut his dick off, that's more power to him. He should be institutionalized. You're transphobic. Thank you.